Well, the year's coming to an end, and the last thing you probably want to talk about during those holiday gatherings is money. In fact, a survey from U.S. Bank found that more parents were comfortable talking about politics with their kids, who they voted for, than they were discussing finances. Here, Scott Ford, U.S. Bank Wealth Management President, joins me now in studio to give his advice on how to start those tough conversations. Scott, great to have you here in studio with us.
Thank you for having me.
First and foremost here, what are some of the biggest anxieties that parents and kids have around money from what you're seeing right now?
Well, a couple things. I think the good news is more parents are having discussions about financial topics with their children in the current generation than their parents had with them. So, for example, I think something like 44% of parents today have discussions about finances, topics like investing in stocks and bonds and mutual funds and things like that, versus like 24% when they were growing up. So that's kind of the good news. The parents are having more conversations. The flip side of that is the kids in today's environment, younger people aren't necessarily looking to their parents for financial advice. You know, many of them are getting financial advice in, social media and the like. So
with that in mind, how do financial conversations now compare to previous generations as well?
You know, it's interesting. There's a generational kind of difference. The older generations didn't really talk a lot about money. I know growing up in my household, like I didn't dare ask my parents, about our finances and
how much you make, man.
Right, how much do you make? Like, why can't I get this toy for Christmas, right? That just was a taboo topic.
Yeah.
But today it's a lot more open and a lot more transparent. So people are having more conversations about money, and it doesn't have the stigma it once did.
Yeah, no, if I had dared ask my parents how much they made, a shoe probably would have turned the corner. What are your top 3 tips for starting those conversations?
We recommend people start small. Like one of the insights from the survey is a third of all Americans, in relationships have lied to their spouse or their partner about finances. So things like how much I have saved, how much debt I'm carrying. So like there's this shame and guilt that underlies all this. There's a very emotional context around money and finances that people have a hard time getting around. So you don't want to start at, kind of tell me everything. I want to know, what your bank balance is, how much do you have invested. Start with smaller things like, hey, what did we spend on groceries this week? Or how much did that cost us? Or another good recommendation is, hey, let's agree that if we spend more than X, we're going to consult each other first before we do that.
That's really good. You also mentioned to try not to judge other people's choices and how they're spending as well. How can you make sure that that's brought up in a healthy way?
It really is an important thing, because think about it, if your finances aren't great to begin with, and we know that people are ashamed to talk about it, being judgmental certainly doesn't help. A good colleague of ours that does a lot of family coaching, Tom Thiegs, he works with high net worth and ultra high net worth families. He literally is a family coach. He kind of shared this thought that transparency is better than secrecy when it comes to it. But you're not going to encourage that kind of behavior if you're really judgmental. So kind of assume positive intent, accept people for where they are, and just, begin from a place of, hey, I want to help and I want our relationship to be better.
So as we're here in the holiday season, then we know that there's going to be a lot of spending taking place. What is the best spending tip that families can be talking about right now, and the advice that they can be sharing amongst one another too?
Well, first thing is kind of try to plan to have a budget. Yeah. People kind of tend to go overboard in the holidays, and then you have that credit card hangover, in January and February, and you could be paying for that stuff forever. So kind of like make a budget and decide, hey, this is what we have to spend, on the holiday season, and we're not going to go above and beyond that. And again, if we're going to break this budget, let's talk about it first, so that, there's not this perception of like, you didn't listen to me and you didn't hear me. One of the insights from the study also was the fact that, for 25% of couples, they cited, financial challenges as their biggest relationship challenge.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of that begins with communication. So start to have the money talk and get on the same page, I think is really important.
Scott, great to have you here in studio with us. Thanks so much for the tips. Hopefully some families know how to begin the conversations now after checking out this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.